walked down his hallway, turning every so often, nearing the destination he'd set for them. She felt him studying her. It didn't bother her anymore. She was used to it. It even flattered her somewhat. Turned her head, looked at him, and their eyes met. She kept his gaze momentarily, then brushed an imaginary piece of lint from his shoulder just to see the effect it would have on him. He turned his head and looked forward. Anyone who wasn't looking for it wouldn't have noticed the color that came to his cheek, faint as it was. But she saw it. She made no attempt to hide her smile, but lowered her eyes. It would not do well to seem as if she was bathing in her boss's embarrassment. So who is it we're going to see? His name is Nicholas Gambit. There must be something to this Nicholas Gambit. A new line of thought occurred to her, and she interrupted herself. That certainly is a fantastic thing to call yourself, Gambit. I don't think he chose a name for himself, Wilkes said, amused. But someone did. At some point in his family's history, one man chose the word Gambit to represent his clan. And get this, he is an African American, he laughed. Ooh, the plot thickens. The word gambit, usually meaning some kind of ploy or a carefully evaluated strategy. What kind of patriarchal former slave would choose a word meaning a carefully evaluated strategy to replace his given slave name? As always, Selina, I bow to your powers for discernment and introspection. And as always, I humbly accept all praise due me. Wilkes laughed out loud. And for you to invite me to join you like this, for I have never had the opportunity to walk these hallowed corridors before, and neither have any of the others as far as I know. Well, this Mr. Gambit must have some special quality to him or about him. If his name is any indication, there will be much plotting and planning at work. Nothing you can't handle, Selina, for you are as crafty as you are lovely. Oh, do go on. I could go on. Well, what's stopping you? Business. Of course. It's always back to that with you, isn't it? Then tell me of our Mr. Gambit. Resident degenerate or future protege? Protege? Doubtful. I think perhaps he hasn't quite decided what to think of me yet. Smart guy. Yes, he is. Quite that. How long's he been in? 1 year, but he is well above average. I'm proud of this one. He'll be moving to the center ring with us soon. Really? After only a year? Not very often I hear you speak so highly of your people. Well, this one is exceptional. This one is exceptional. Wow, my heart's all aflutter. Do get me to thy specimen. Here we are. They turned a corner and came up on the window that provided a view into Janai's dojo. A wooden bar that looked as if it was meant to be leaned upon was positioned horizontally just below the large window and extended from the wall. Selina placed her hands upon it and peered into the room. She knew who he was immediately. His back was turned to them, and he was facing the others in the room, but there was no mistaking that this had to be the one whom Wilkes had become so excited about. He was inches away from the glass, and she felt almost as if she could reach out and touch his mahogany skin. And though there were many in the room, everyone's attention, including Janai's, was focused on him. He wore only sweats. They fit him well, but it would have been nice to see his legs, she thought. As her eyes scanned upwards, they encountered a muscular back and upper body. His broad and white shoulders sloped downwards into large, well-sculptured arms. She was curious to see the front of him, but there was no hurry. The perspective provided by this angle was pleasing enough. Then his head rose as if he detected something, and he turned and looked her straight in the eyes. She thought she might lose her breath from surprise. He watched her and studied her momentarily, then looked at Wilkes and nodded. Wilkes returned the salutation. Again, he looked at her, and his eyes scanned only her face, though it was possible to see almost all of her. But he looked only at her face, searching it. She found herself held in his gaze, and she thought he was beautiful. There was an enigmatic, dark contrast to his features, soft and inviting, sensual and attentive, countered by calculating and combative, rugged and dominant. His eyes themselves opened to her suddenly and telling her nothing. A lump formed in her throat, and she let it be, for fear he might see her swallow, giving herself away to him. He nodded to her as well, then backed away, still looking her in the eyes. Finally, he turned. She allowed herself to breathe and realized Wilkes had been watching her. She knew she'd been discovered and so chose not to hide her infatuation. He's magnificent. He smiled, turned his head from her, and looked through the window. Just wait. Suddenly, the others crossed the room and attacked him. Her heart jumped and her grasp onto the rail tightened. The first man reached him and threw a punch. It was immediately deflected, and the man went flying, his own momentum used against him. Two others that seemed to be working together tried to tackle him simultaneously, and everything in the real world lost its meaning to her. He was suddenly up high in the air, and the two assailants tackled nothingness, then flew into a wall. He jumped. He jumped right over them as they came at him and let them pass underneath. He jumped and cleared what must have been a good 5 feet height and came back down to his feet as if he'd climbed a single stair. There were still three others, and they were closing in. One attacked. The attacker kicked at her protagonist and connected with him just as he'd come down, sending him backwards onto his back. As if unfazed by the blow, he exploited the momentum given him by the kick and rolled, coming up near the others who were just recovering. He kicked one in the head, then came and elbowed in a downward slashing motion that connected with someone's head just as he was standing up, and two of them were sent back to the floor, bloody. The third was picked up and thrown at the one who'd connected with him and who was now attacking again, and they collided. Gambit attacked the two of them and hit one in the small of the neck from behind, and he fell, unconscious. The other threw up his hands to protect himself from the onslaught that came. A jab to the face, an uppercut, then he was swept, his feet flying out from underneath him. He went horizontal, and before he hit the ground was hit in the stomach with a punch that drew from something deep inside the man and flew from the side of his body, leveraged from his waist and the way it swiveled, and that was the end of them all. She thought she had used the right term earlier. This was indeed an extraordinary specimen of a man. Just look at him, Selena. He's perfect, smart, strong, fast, black, but without any of the failures you usually get with him. He'll always be underestimated because of his color, and that's exactly what I need. A prince in pauper's clothing.